Alright, so hello everyone and welcome to my review of the Revenant, our newest Eidolon themed Warframe. I wanted to wait a little bit with this one and it paid off because the latest hotfix changed a couple of things here and there. So let us get right into it, and as always we're gonna start off with the acquisition. The Revenant is fairly easy to get. You simply go to the town of Cetus at any time of day, you talk to Nakak, which is the mask vendor, and you ask her about a mask. This will result in you being able to buy the Mask of the Lost One, which is the one you need to buy for one Cetus Wisp. Once you have the mask, you have to go back into your orbiter, equip it onto your operator, and go back into the plains of Eidolon during the night. This will trigger a very short quest, at the end of which you will get the blueprint for the Revenant, with the other parts being available from bounties. The Revenant comes with 100 health, which goes up to 300 at rank 30, 225 shields, which goes up to 675 at rank 30, 105 armor, which is not too bad, 125 energy, which goes up to 188 at rank 30, sprint speed of 1, which is average, and he has 3 polarities, a V, a D, and then a dash polarity in the aura slot. His abilities are kind of a mixed bag of everything. He can enslave the enemies and turn them to his side, he can protect himself or dash through enemies while stealing health and shields, or he can even burst out the Dance of Death and straight up just kill everything. His passive is also fairly interesting. It's kind of similar to Nova's passive, but instead of pulsing out a radio blast whenever you get knocked down, which is what Nova does, he pulses out a radio blast whenever his shields reach 0. And I think that's enough blabbering, so let's finally check out his abilities more in depth. So his first ability is called THRALL, where he converts a target into a zealous thrall, hence the name. It has a base casting range of 25 meters, you can have up to maximum of 7 thralls, and it lasts for 30 seconds before any duration mods. It's a little bit more interesting than that though, because THRALL spreads around. If your thrall damages another enemy, it will convert it into your thrall as well, if you of course don't have the maximum amount of thralls already. On top of that, if the enemy dies while under the effect of your enthrall, they will leave behind a pillar of light that lasts 10 seconds, does 1000 puncture damage every second, and has a radius of 2 meters. However, as you just saw, they are susceptible to friendly fire. Now, power duration affects both the duration of the actual enthrall ability as well as the duration of the pillar they leave behind when they die. Power range affects the casting range of the ability as well as the radius of the pillar they leave behind when they die. Power strength only affects the damage of the pillar they leave behind when they die, and then there is casting speed that you get from natural talent or speed drift, and this speeds up the casting animation of the ability. There's also a bunch of interactions going on between your enthrall and your other abilities, but I will talk about those when I talk about those abilities. So all that's really left to say for now is that this is a one-handed ability, so it will not interrupt reloading and parkour maneuvers. Revenant's second ability is called MESMER Skin, where he covers himself in sentient energy, which will redirect damage and stun enemies that attack you. Now this one is pretty interesting because it works differently to any other sort of Iron Skin style ability. It has a set amount of attacks that it will protect you from, which is 6. It will reflect 100% of the damage as well as any status effects that those attacks would proc, and on top of that it stuns the enemies for 5 seconds. Now the amount of charges you get on MESMER Skin, or the amount of attacks it will protect you from, is dictated by power strength. The amount of time the enemy gets stunned for when they hit you while you have MESMER Skin is affected by ability duration. You cannot recast MESMER Skin while it's already active to refresh your stacks, you just have to wait for the enemies to chip them off before you can cast it again, and it's a two-handed action, so you cannot reload or do parkour maneuvers while the casting animation is in progress. This is also where we run into our first enthrall interaction, because enemies stunned by the reflected damage from MESMER Skin can be enthralled at no energy cost. Now the best thing about this ability is that it doesn't have a damage cap on the stack, so an enemy could shoot you for 1 trillion damage but it will still do 0, take all that damage instead and get stunned. But funny enough, the worst thing about this ability is that it doesn't have a damage cap, because it doesn't matter how much damage the enemy is doing, they could be doing 1 damage and still take off a stack. It can also be a little bit iffy when it comes to splash damage every now and then, because sometimes you will nullify the entire impact of a bombard rocket, but the splash damage will hit you anyway. Revenant's third ability is called REAVE, where he transforms himself into a wall of sentient energy and dashes forward. And while he's doing that, he will leech health and shields from any enemies he passes through. Now the base duration of the dash is 1 second, and this can be affected by power duration, and the width of the wall is set at 6 meters and cannot be modified by power range. Now every time this wall connects with an enemy while dashing, it will steal 8% of their maximum shields and health, and restore 8% of your maximum shields and health. However, it will only restore your shields if the enemy has shields as well. And this, just like the width of the wall, is set in stone. You cannot modify it via power strength. This is also where we run into our second interaction with Enthrall, because if you dash through an enthralled enemy, both the damage done to the enemy as well as the healing done to you will be increased by 40%. And as you can see over here, this ability is also usable while channeling your fourth ability, allowing you to quickly move around. Now, one sort of minor downside of this ability is that you cannot steer while you're dashing, so you will always dash straight forward. However, you can hit the ability button again, which will cancel the dash. And I don't think there's much else to say about this one. It is by far my least used Revenant ability, and I mostly use it just to dash around in Danse Macabre. And Revenant's fourth and final ability is called Danse Macabre, where he turns into a ballerina of doom and kills everyone with lasers. This is a pretty crazy ability because it will make the Revenant levitate, spin clockwise, and shoot 9 laser beams out of his left arm. Just like that. And these beams can cover a radius of 50 meters while doing 1250 damage per second with 20% status chance. Though most of the time the range or the radius isn't as crazy as it sounds because the beams are angled downwards. Now the damage of Danse Macabre can first of all be affected by power strength, but second of all by also holding down the fire button. This will double the damage, double the status chance, but also double the energy drain. And that is no joke after the nerf, because it now drains 20 energy per second, so when you empower it, it will drain 40. This actually makes me really sad because that was like the most unfun way to nerf it. However, you can still lower the energy drain by using power efficiency mods and power duration mods. And unlike with a lot of other abilities, the casting speed you get from natural talent and speed drift doesn't just affect the initial casting animation, it will actually affect the speed at which you turn around. Now, probably the best thing about Danse Macabre though is that it will adapt its damage based on the type of enemies you hit with it. If you hit something with armor, you will do corrosive damage and proc corrosive. If you hit something with shields, you will do magnetic damage and proc magnetic. And finally, if you hit infested flesh, you will do gas damage, create gas clouds, and proc toxin. Now, this ability will also interact with your other abilities, so if you kill an enthralled enemy, they will drop an overshield pickup. Any damage that you reflected via Mesmer skin will be stored and dealt as extra damage via Danse Macabre, and as I've mentioned already, you can also reave around while channeling Danse Macabre. Also, just like any other ability that drains energy, it will disable most means of gaining energy back, so you can only get it via health orbs, arcane energize when a primed frame gets close to a death orb in the void, and rage or hunter adrenaline. And finally, you are immune to knockdown while dancing around, which is always nice. And I almost forgot, while Danse Macabre is affected by power range, it will only increase the thickness of the beam, which doesn't really do anything. And now we come to the conclusion. So what do I actually think about the Revenant? Well, I think he's pretty cool, but there are a few things that kind of irk me at the moment. The first and the biggest thing is something that I've already mentioned, and that was the nerf to Danse Macabre, because they've literally done the most unfun thing they could have to nerf it. It's just not a lot of fun now, it drains way too much energy. The second one is your thralls taking full friendly fire, so they're pretty much useless in party play because they get mowed down by your teammates, which pretty much just completely nullify 3 of Revenant's interactions in party play. And the third and final one is a bit of a stretch because it will probably get fixed soon, but Mesmer skin can be pretty buggy, especially when it comes to nullifiers. And now that I'm thinking about it, REAVE isn't really that interesting either because it's basically Rhino charge, but instead of the knockdown and damage, you have leech. There's always something that gets in the way of his abilities being amazing, you know, the friendly fire for Enthrall, the bugginess for Mesmer skin, the kind of mediocreness, that's a word now, for REAVE, and the energy drain for Danse Macabre. He's so damn close to being the best thing ever, but he's not. But even with all of that said, I would still recommend you pick him up because the questline is very short, so the acquisition isn't a big deal at all, and he is fun. It's just that it's so obvious how much more fun he could be with just a couple of tweaks here and there. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say, so I thank you very much for watching. As always guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video and it was helpful, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.